Jake Morrison stared at the green numbers on his screen. They didn't make sense. The signal was coming from Earth, but that was impossible. Earth had been dead for 3 months now. He rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the display again. The numbers were still there, blinking softly in the dim light of Europa Base's communications center. Jake had been working the night shift for 2 weeks straight, listening to empty space and hoping for any sign of human life. Most nights, he heard nothing but static and the distant hum of Jupiter's radiation. Tonight was different. The signal was weak but clear. It came from coordinates that Jake recognized immediately: downtown Chicago, right where he used to live before joining the Space Navy. But Chicago was gone now. The whole planet was gone, turned to glass and ash by the Zephyrian Empire's weapons. Jake had watched it happen from this very chair. The alien ships had appeared without warning, blocking out the sun with their massive hulls. Earth's defenses had lasted exactly 14 hours. After that, there was only silence. Now, 3 months later, something was calling from the ruins. Jake's hands shook as he adjusted the receivers. The signal was getting stronger. It wasn't random noise or interference. This was structured, deliberate. Someone or something was trying to communicate. He grabbed his coffee mug and took a long drink of the cold, bitter liquid. His supervisor, Commander Grant, had gone to bed hours ago. The rest of the skeleton crew was scattered throughout the base, most of them sleeping or pretending to sleep. Jake was alone with his discovery. The signal pulsed in a pattern. 3 long beeps, followed by 5 short ones, then 3 long again. Jake frowned and reached for his notebook. He'd learned basic communication codes in training, but this seemed different. Older somehow. Then it hit him. Morse code. Ancient Morse code. Jake's fingers flew over his keyboard as he translated the pattern. SOS, the old distress signal from Earth's history. Someone down there was calling for help. His heart pounded as he continued listening. After the SOS pattern, there was a pause. Then something else. Numbers. Coordinates. Then what sounded like technical specifications, all transmitted in the same old-fashioned code. Jake looked around the empty communication center. He should wake Commander Grant. He should follow protocol and report this through proper channels. But something made him hesitate. If this was real, if someone had actually survived on Earth, then time might be running out. The Zephyrians were still patrolling the system, hunting for any remaining human presence. Instead of calling his supervisor, Jake made a different choice. He opened a secure channel to Dr. Lisa Parker in the research section. Lisa was one of the few people on the base who understood alien technology and quantum physics. If anyone could make sense of this signal, it would be her. "Lisa, are you awake?" Jake whispered into his headset. There was a long pause, then Lisa's sleepy voice came through the speakers. "Jake, what time is it? This better be important." "It is. I need you to come to the communication center right now. I'm receiving a signal. From Earth." Another pause, longer this time. "Jake, Earth is dead. We've been over this. There's nothing left down there but, Lisa, I'm looking at the coordinates right now. The signal is coming from downtown Chicago. Someone is using Morse code to transmit technical data. This isn't my imagination." Lisa was quiet for almost a minute. Jake could hear her moving around, probably getting dressed. Finally, she spoke again. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. Don't touch anything until I arrive." Jake waited, listening to the signal repeat its pattern. Every 72 minutes. Exactly. The same message, over and over. SOS, followed by coordinates, followed by what looked like blueprints for some kind of communication device. Lisa arrived wearing a bathrobe and carrying a tablet computer. Her dark hair was messy from sleep, but her eyes were alert and focused. She was originally from Earth, too, from a small town in Ohio. Like Jake, she had family down there when the invasion happened. "Show me," she said simply. Jake played back the recorded signal and showed her his translations. Lisa sat down at the secondary workstation and began running the data through her analysis programs. Her fingers moved quickly over the keyboard, calling up databases and reference materials. "This is incredible," Lisa said after 20 minutes of work. "The technical specifications are for a quantum communication array, but the design is unlike anything I've seen. It's using principles that our best scientists were just beginning to understand before the invasion. Could it be Zephyrian technology?" Jake asked. Lisa shook her head. "No, definitely human in origin, but advanced, very advanced. Whoever designed this understands quantum entanglement theory better than anyone at the Science Academy ever did." The signal began its pattern again. Jake and Lisa listened in silence as the Morse code spelled out its desperate message. "SOS, help us. We're still here." "We have to tell Commander Grant," Lisa said finally. "He'll want to report it to Admiral." "Hayes," Jake replied. "Hayes will order us to stay away from Earth. Too dangerous. Too risky." Maybe he's right. Maybe it is too dangerous. Jake turned to face Lisa directly. "What if it was your family down there? What if your brother or your parents had somehow survived and they were calling for help? Would you want us to stay away because it was too dangerous?" Lisa stared at the signal display for a long moment. Jake could see her thinking, weighing the risks against the possibility that human beings were still alive on their home planet. "There's something else," Lisa said quietly. "The quantum communication theory in these specifications. If it works the way I think it does, it could change everything. It could give us a way to hide from the Zephyrians, to build safe places where they can't find us." "You mean we could fight back?" "Maybe. Or at least survive long enough to find a way to fight back." The signal continued its patient repetition. Somewhere in the ruins of Earth, someone was waiting for an answer. Someone was hoping that other humans were still alive among the stars. Jake made his decision. "I'm going to talk to Captain Foster. He might be willing to authorize a reconnaissance mission." "Jake, that's crazy. Foster won't risk a ship and crew based on one mysterious signal." "Then I'll make him understand how important this could be." "Lisa, what if this is our chance? What if this is how we start fighting back?" Lisa looked at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "If you're going to do this, you'll need someone who understands the quantum technology. I'm coming with you." Jake smiled for the first time in months. "Let's go wake up the captain." Captain Ryan Foster stood at the bridge of the stealth frigate Meridian, watching Earth grow larger on the main screen. The planet looked like a broken marble, covered in dark scars where cities used to be. Jake Morrison stood beside him, trying not to think about what they might find down there. It had taken 3 days to convince Foster to authorize the mission. The captain was a careful man who didn't like taking unnecessary risks. But when Lisa showed him the quantum communication specifications, Foster understood what they could mean for humanity's survival. "Entering Earth's atmosphere in 5 minutes," announced Amy Chun from the pilot's seat. Amy was the best pilot on Europa Base, known for her ability to fly through asteroid fields without getting a scratch on her ship. If anyone could get them to the surface safely, it was her. Tony Martinez sat at the engineering station, monitoring the ship's stealth systems. The Meridian was invisible to most sensors, but Zephyrian technology was advanced. One mistake could bring enemy patrol ships down on them within minutes. "Zephyrian ships are still in the outer system," Tony reported. 3 destroyers near Mars, and a command ship stationed at the moon. They don't seem to have noticed us yet. Foster nodded. "Keep us quiet. We're not here to fight." Jake looked at the screen showing Earth's surface as they descended. Chicago was supposed to be somewhere in that vast wasteland below. He had grown up there, gone to school there, met his first girlfriend at a coffee shop on Michigan Avenue. Now it was all gone. "I'm picking up the signal," Lisa said from her workstation. "It's getting stronger as we get closer. The source is definitely in the Chicago area." The meridian broke through the clouds, and Jake got his first clear look at his home planet in 3 months. What he saw made his stomach twist with grief and anger. The landscape was a nightmare of twisted metal and melted glass. Where forests once grew, there were only black stumps. Where rivers once flowed, there were only empty channels filled with ash. "My God," Amy whispered. They destroyed everything. The Zephyrians had been thorough. Their massive ships had bombarded every major city, every military base, every spaceport. Then they had sent down mining ships to strip away anything valuable. What remained looked like the surface of a dead moon. "There," Lisa said, pointing at her screen. "I'm detecting the signal source. It's coming from about 2 miles south of where downtown Chicago used to be." Foster ordered Amy to take them down carefully. The meridian settled onto a flat piece of ground that might once have been a parking lot. Through the windows, they could see the ruins of skyscrapers rising like broken teeth from the rubble. "Atmosphere is breathable," Tony reported. "Radiation levels are high, but not dangerous for short exposure. We should be able to work outside for several hours." The team put on their protective suits and left the ship. Jake stepped onto Earth's surface for the first time since the invasion. The ground crunched under his boots. Everything was covered in a thin layer of gray dust that had once been buildings, trees, and people. They walked through the ruins toward the signal source. Lisa carried a handheld detector that beeped steadily as they got closer. The broken city around them was completely silent, except for the wind blowing through empty window frames. "This is impossible," Amy said as they climbed over a pile of concrete blocks. How could anything survive this? Jake was wondering the same thing. The Zephyrian weapons had turned concrete into powder and steel into vapor. Nothing should have been left standing. But as they got closer to the signal source, he began to see something strange. One city block ahead of them looked different. The buildings there were still standing. The streets were clear. It looked exactly like downtown Chicago had looked before the invasion, as if someone had preserved a piece of the old world in the middle of all the destruction. "Are you seeing this?" Lisa asked, staring at her detector. "The quantum readings are off the charts. There's some kind of energy field around that area." Foster stopped the team at the edge of the preserved block. Up close, they could see a shimmering in the air, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. Beyond the shimmer, everything looked normal and untouched. "It's like a bubble," Tony said. "Something is protecting that area from the outside." In the center of the preserved block, Jake could see a small glass booth on the sidewalk. A payphone. An actual payphone from the early 21st century, the kind he remembered from old movies and history books. The signal was coming from there. "That's our source," Lisa confirmed. "The quantum communication device is inside that phone booth." As they watched, the phone began to ring. The sound was clear and loud, cutting through the silence of the dead city. Jake felt his heart racing. Someone was trying to call them. Foster looked at his team. This could be a trap. The Zephyrians might be using our own technology against us. "Or it could be exactly what we hoped for," Jake replied. "Other survivors trying to make contact." The phone kept ringing. Jake could see it through the energy field, an old-fashioned black telephone mounted on the wall of the booth. He had never seen anything like it outside of a museum. "I'm going in," Jake said. "Wait," Foster ordered. "We don't know what that energy field will do to you." Lisa was studying her readings. "The quantum signature is definitely human in origin. I don't think it's a trap, but I also don't understand how it works." Jake looked at his team. Amy was checking her weapons. Tony was scanning the area for threats. Foster was calculating risks. Lisa was trying to solve the scientific puzzle. But Jake was thinking about the signal they had received back on Europa base. SOS, help us. We're still here. Someone was waiting for them to answer. Jake walked toward the energy field. As he got closer, he could feel something strange happening. The air around him seemed to thicken, and his skin tingled like he was walking through an electric charge. But there was no pain, no danger. He stepped through the shimmer and found himself standing on a normal city street. The air was clean and fresh. The buildings around him were whole and undamaged. Cars were parked along the curb, as if their owners had just gone inside for lunch. The phone was still ringing. Jake walked to the booth and picked up the receiver. Hello? There was a moment of silence. Then a man's voice came through clearly. Thank God. I was beginning to think we were the only ones left. My name is Nathan Cross. Are you with the Resistance? Jake looked back at his team, who were standing just outside the energy field, watching him with amazement. This is Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, Earth Defense Forces. We received your signal. How many of you are there? Nearly 200. Nathan replied, We've been hiding here since the invasion. Listen carefully. What you're standing in is a pocket dimension, a small piece of space that exists parallel to your reality. We've been trying to contact any surviving human forces for months. How is this possible? Jake asked. Quantum physics and a lot of luck. But we're running out of time. The field that protects us is weakening. We need help, and we think we might be able to help you too. Jake motioned for his team to join him. One by one, they stepped through the energy field and found themselves in the preserved world. Foster immediately began scanning the area with his equipment, while Lisa took readings on the quantum field. Dr. Cross, Jake said into the phone, we're here to help. What do you need us to do? First, I need you to come to us. The entrance to our facility is 3 blocks north of your position, in the basement of the old Science Museum. But Jake, you should know something. What we've discovered here could change the war. We might have found a way for humanity to hide from the Zephyrians and fight back. Jake looked at his team. They were all listening to the conversation now. Foster nodded slowly. We're on our way, Jake said. Jake and his team walked through the strange preserved streets toward the Science Museum. Everything around them looked exactly like Chicago before the invasion. Street lights worked. Traffic signals changed colors. Even the old newspaper stands had fresh papers in them, though the dates were all from 3 months ago. This is incredible, Amy said, looking up at the undamaged buildings. It's like we stepped back in time. Tony was scanning the area with his equipment. The quantum field is everywhere. It's not just protecting this place. It's actually keeping it frozen in time. Everything here is exactly as it was on the day of the invasion. Lisa walked beside Jake, taking readings on her tablet. The energy requirements for something like this should be enormous. But I'm not detecting any power source. It's like the field is sustaining itself. Captain Foster stayed alert, his hand near his weapon. Stay sharp, everyone. Just because it looks safe doesn't mean it is. They found the Science Museum 3 blocks north, just as Nathan Cross had said. The building looked normal from the outside, but when they went to the basement entrance, Jake saw something that made him stop and stare. The basement door was made of metal that seemed to shimmer and shift in the light. It wasn't quite solid, like looking at water from underwater. As they approached, the door simply faded away, leaving an opening they could walk through. Quantum matter displacement, Lisa whispered. The door exists in multiple dimensions at once. When we get close, it moves to a different space so we can pass through. Beyond the door was a staircase that led down into darkness. Jake went first, followed by the others. As they descended, lights came on automatically, showing them a corridor that stretched much further than should have been possible under the museum. The space is bigger inside than outside, Tony observed. They've expanded the dimensions of this place. At the end of the corridor, they found another door. This one was solid metal with a small window. Through the glass, Jake could see a large room filled with people. Men, women, and children, all wearing normal clothes and talking quietly among themselves. They looked healthy and well-fed, nothing like refugees who had been hiding for 3 months. The door opened, and a man stepped out to greet them. He was tall and thin, with gray hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a simple white lab coat over jeans and a sweater. "I'm Nathan Cross," he said, extending his hand to Jake. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure anyone would." "Hear our signal." Jake shook his hand. "How is all this possible, Dr. Cross?" "According to our records, Chicago was completely destroyed." Nathan smiled sadly. "It was. What you see upstairs is just an echo, a quantum impression of what this place used to be. The real Chicago is gone forever. But we managed to save ourselves and create this pocket of space where we could survive." He led them into the main room. Jake counted about 200 people, just as Nathan had said. There were scientists in lab coats, military personnel in uniform, families with small children, elderly couples, and teenagers. They all looked up as the newcomers entered, hope lighting up their faces. A woman approached them. She had short brown hair and wore a lab coat similar to Nathan's. "This is Dr. Karen Walsh, my research partner," Nathan said. "We developed the pocket dimension technology together." Karen shook hands with each team member. "You have no idea how good it is to see other survivors. We were beginning to think we were the last humans alive." Foster looked around the facility. "This is impressive, but how long can you maintain it?" "What do you need from us?" Nathan and Karen exchanged a look. "That's the problem," Nathan said. "This pocket dimension is stable, but it's limited. We can only support our current population for about 6 more months before the quantum field starts to collapse." "What happens then?" Amy asked. "We all die," Karen said simply. "The pocket dimension will implode, taking everything inside with it." Jake felt his heart sink. These people had survived the impossible, only to face death anyway. "Is there anything we can do to help?" Nathan's eyes brightened. "Actually, there might be. The technology we developed here could do more than just create hiding places. If we can build more pocket dimensions and connect them with quantum communication networks, we could establish safe havens throughout the galaxy." Lisa stepped forward, her tablet in hand. "The specifications you transmitted to us, they're for building more of these quantum communication devices." "Exactly," Karen said. "Each device can serve as an anchor point for a new pocket dimension. But we need resources and materials that were destroyed in the invasion. Quantum processors, exotic matter generators, things that only exist on advanced space stations." "Europa Base has some of those materials," Tony said. "Not much, but maybe enough to build a few devices." Nathan nodded eagerly. "A few would be enough to start. Once we establish a network of connected pocket dimensions, we can begin moving survivors to safety. We could save thousands of people who are still hiding throughout the galaxy." Foster was thinking carefully. What about the military applications? Could this technology be used to hide ships or weapons? "Yes," Nathan admitted. "A pocket dimension could conceal an entire fleet. The Zephyrians wouldn't be able to detect ships that are hidden in parallel space." Jake felt excitement building in his chest. We could build a hidden navy. Strike at the Zephyrians when they least expect it, then disappear before they can respond. "That's the idea," Karen said. "But first, we need to solve the immediate problem." We're running out of time here. Lisa was studying her readings again. Dr. Cross, I'm detecting some fluctuations in the quantum field. Is the dimension becoming unstable? Nathan's face grew serious. We've been noticing that too. The field has been weakening over the past few weeks. We think it's because we're drawing too much power to maintain the upstairs illusion and the communication system. Can you shut down the preservation field upstairs? Foster asked. Focus all your power on keeping this place stable? We could, Karen said, but then we'd lose our ability to communicate with the outside world. The payphone system needs the upstairs field to work. Jake realized they were facing an impossible choice. The survivors could extend their lives by a few months, but they would be cut off from any hope of rescue. Or they could keep trying to contact other humans, but risk the whole pocket dimension collapsing sooner. There's another option, Amy said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. What if we take some of you back to Europa Base? We can't fit everyone on the Meridian, but we could evacuate maybe 20 or 30 people. Nathan shook his head. We won't abandon the others. We all survive together, or we don't survive at all. Jake understood that feeling. He wouldn't want to leave people behind either, but there had to be another way. Dr. Cross, Jake said, how long would it take to build one quantum communication device if we brought you the materials from Europa Base with the right components? Maybe 2 weeks, Nathan replied. And how long do you have before this pocket dimension becomes unstable? Karen checked her instruments. At the current rate of decay, maybe 8 weeks, 10 at the most. Jake looked at his team, then back at Nathan and Karen. Then here's what we're going to do. We're going back to Europa Base to get the materials you need. While we're gone, you focus all your power on keeping this place stable. Shut down everything. Else if you have to. But the communication system, Nathan protested. We'll be back, Jake promised. With enough materials to build not just one device, but several. We're going to create your network of pocket dimensions, and we're going to use it to start fighting back against the Zephyrians. Foster nodded his approval. It's risky, but it's our best option. How many people can we evacuate on this trip? The Meridian can handle maybe 10 extra passengers, Amy said. Nathan looked around the room at all the faces watching them. We'll send our most essential personnel. Scientists who understand the technology, military leaders who can help plan the resistance. No, said an elderly woman from across the room. Send the children first. A murmur of agreement ran through the crowd. Jake saw parents nodding, putting their arms around their kids. These people were willing to risk their own lives to save the next generation. We'll make it work, Jake said. We'll take who we can now and come back for the rest. I promise you, no one gets left behind. As the survivors began deciding who would go and who would stay, Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. These people were depending on him to save them. More than that, they were depending on him to help save humanity itself. The war against the Zephyrians was about to change, and it would start with an old payphone in the ruins of Chicago. Lisa worked alongside Karen in the underground laboratory, their hands moving quickly over quantum equations that filled 3 large screens. The math was complex, but Lisa was beginning to understand how the pocket dimension technology worked. It was brilliant and terrifying at the same time. The key is quantum entanglement, Karen explained, pointing to a series of formulas. We create pairs of particles that remain connected no matter how far apart they are. One particle stays here to anchor the pocket dimension, and the other goes to wherever we want to build a new safe haven. Tony stood nearby, studying the components they would need. Most of this stuff exists on Europa Base, he said, but we're going to need a lot of it. The quantum processors alone will require dismantling half our communication array. Jake watched the 2 women work together. Lisa had always been brilliant, but Karen was on another level entirely. Before the invasion, she had been working on theories that most scientists thought were impossible. Now those theories were keeping 200 people alive. There's something else we need to consider, Karen said, turning away from the screens. The Zephyrians have been studying human technology since the invasion. If they detect our quantum signatures, they might figure out how to track us. Captain Foster, who had been listening quietly, stepped forward. What kind of risk are we talking about? Unknown, Karen admitted. We've been hidden here for 3 months without detection. But if we start building a network of pocket dimensions, we'll be creating quantum disturbances throughout the galaxy. The Zephyrians might notice. Jake felt a chill. You're saying this could lead them right to us? It's possible. But Jake, we're going to die anyway if we don't try. The pocket dimension here is failing. We have maybe 2 months before it collapses completely. Nathan approached their group, carrying a small device that looked like a metallic cube. I've been working on a solution to the detection problem, he said. This is a quantum dampener. It can mask our signatures from most scanning equipment. Amy examined the device. How well does it work? We don't know yet, Nathan said honestly. We haven't had a chance to test it against Zephyrian sensors. But it's based on their own technology. We recovered some of their equipment from the ruins. Upstairs, Lisa looked surprised. You went outside the pocket dimension? A few times, Karen said. We needed to gather materials and information. It's dangerous, but possible for short periods. Foster was thinking hard. Jake could see the calculations running through the captain's mind. Risk versus reward. The chance of success versus the chance of getting everyone killed. We need to make a decision, Foster said finally. Do we play it safe and try to evacuate everyone slowly, or do we take the risk and build the network? Before anyone could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Red lights flashed, and people started running toward their emergency stations. Nathan grabbed a communicator from his belt. Report, he said into the device. Dr. Cross. We're detecting multiple Zephyrian ships entering Earth's atmosphere, came the reply. They're heading directly for Chicago. Jake felt his blood turn cold. How many ships? Nathan listened to his communicator, his face growing pale. 12 destroyers and a command vessel. They'll be here in 20 minutes. They found us, Karen said quietly. Somehow, they detected the pocket dimension. Foster immediately activated his own communicator. Chun, get the Meridian ready for immediate departure. We may need to evacuate quickly. Amy's voice came back through the static. Captain, I'm detecting the Zephyrian ships on my sensors. They're not just heading for Chicago. They're surrounding the entire area. I don't think we can get out without being detected. Jake looked around the facility. 200 people were depending on them. Children were crying as their parents held them close. The elderly were being helped to emergency shelters. These people had survived the impossible, and now they were trapped. We stick to the plan, Jake said. We build the network. Jake, we don't have time, Foster protested. It will take weeks to construct the devices. Then we build them fast. Lisa said, understanding what Jake was thinking. We take the biggest risks and make the biggest jumps. If we're going to die anyway, we might as well try to save as many people as possible. Nathan was already moving toward the equipment storage area. If we work together, we might be able to build 3 or 4 devices in the next few hours. It won't be perfect, but it might be enough. Enough for what? Amy asked through the communicator. Enough to create emergency pocket dimensions, Karen explained. Small ones that can hold maybe 50 people each. We can scatter the survivors throughout the solar system. Tony was pulling components from storage containers. We'll need to strip power from the main pocket dimension to charge the new devices. This place will become unstable even faster. How much faster? Foster asked. Karen checked her instruments. If we drain power to build 4 devices, we'll have maybe 6 hours before total collapse. Jake looked at his team. They were all thinking the same thing. 6 hours to build quantum communication devices that should take weeks to construct. 6 hours to create new pocket dimensions and evacuate 200 people. 6 hours to start a resistance network that could save humanity. It was impossible. But humans had been doing impossible things for months now. Let's get to work, Jake said. The next 4 hours were the most intense of Jake's life. Lisa and Karen worked on the quantum equations, while Tony and Nathan assembled the devices. Jake coordinated the evacuation groups, deciding who would go, where and when. Foster maintained contact with Amy, who was monitoring the Zephyrian ships circling overhead. The first device was ready in 2 hours. They activated it and created a small pocket dimension near Europa Base. The first 50 survivors, mostly families with children, stepped through a shimmering doorway and disappeared into safety. The second device took another hour. This one created a pocket dimension near the asteroid belt, far from any Zephyrian patrols. 50 more people vanished through the quantum portal. By the time they finished the third device, the main pocket dimension was beginning to shake. The walls flickered, like a bad television signal, and the air itself seemed to vibrate. How much longer? Jake asked Karen. Maybe an hour before total collapse, she replied, sweat beading on her forehead from the strain of maintaining the quantum field. The fourth device was their most ambitious. Instead of creating a new pocket dimension, they programmed it to link all the existing ones together. If it worked, the survivors would be able to communicate and coordinate their efforts across the galaxy. It's ready, Nathan announced, his hands shaking with exhaustion. They activated the device, and immediately Jake could hear voices coming through the quantum communicators. The scattered survivors were talking to each other, sharing information. And hope. We did it, Lisa said, hardly believing it herself. But their celebration was cut short. The facility shook violently, and several pieces of equipment fell from the tables. The pocket dimension was collapsing faster than expected. Everyone out, Foster ordered. Now, the remaining survivors rushed toward the last quantum portal. Jake helped an elderly man through the doorway, then turned back to see Karen and Nathan still working at their stations. Come on, Jake called to them. We have to go. Nathan looked up from his equipment. Someone needs to stay behind to maintain the network. If the hub device fails, all the pocket dimensions will collapse. We'll find another way, Jake said. We're not leaving you behind. Karen smiled sadly. Jake, this is what we trained for. What we lived for. Saving humanity is worth any sacrifice. The facility shook again, more violently this time. Cracks appeared in the walls, and the lights began to flicker. Go, Nathan said firmly. Take care of our people. Use the network to fight back. Make our sacrifice mean something. Jake wanted to argue, but he knew they were right. Someone had to maintain the hub, and Nathan and Karen were the only ones who understood the technology well enough to keep it running. Foster grabbed Jake's arm. We have to go now, or we'll all die here. Jake looked at Nathan and Karen one last time. They were already back at their stations, working to stabilize the network as everything collapsed around them. Thank you, Jake said. Then he stepped through the quantum portal and left them behind. Jake stepped out of the quantum portal and found himself standing in a small room carved from solid rock. The air was thin and cold, and he could hear the hum of life support systems working hard to keep the space habitable. Through a small window, he could see the rings of Saturn glowing in the distance. Welcome to Outpost 7, said a woman Jake didn't recognize. She wore a simple gray jumpsuit and had short black hair. "I'm Commander Beth Miller. Dr. Cross told us you were coming." Jake looked around the room. About 30 people were gathered there, most of them scientists and engineers who had been evacuated from the Chicago pocket dimension. They all looked tired and worried, but alive. "How long have we been here?" Jake asked. "The quantum portal." Travel felt instant, but he knew that time could work differently between dimensions. "About 12 hours, Beth replied. "Long enough for us to set up basic living quarters and establish contact with the other outposts." Lisa emerged from the portal behind Jake, followed by Tony and Captain Foster. Amy was the last to come through, and as soon as she stepped into the room, the portal flickered and disappeared. "That's it," Amy said. "The Chicago hub just went offline." Jake felt a heavy weight settle in his chest. Nathan and Karen were gone. The brave scientists had stayed behind to maintain the network until the very last moment, knowing they would die when the pocket dimension collapsed. Were they able to complete the network setup? Foster asked. Beth nodded and led them to a control station. Dr. Cross and Dr. Walsh worked until the final seconds. "The network is stable and fully operational. We now have 12 pocket dimensions connected throughout the solar system." She showed them a map on the screen. Glowing dots marked the locations of each hidden outpost. Most were near asteroids or small moons where they would be hard to detect. Each one held between 30 and 60 survivors. "Total population?" Jake asked. 743 people, Beth reported. "We managed to save everyone from the Chicago facility, plus survivors from other locations that Dr. Cross had been in contact with." Jake felt a moment of relief. They had done it. They had actually saved hundreds of people and created a hidden network that the Zephyrians couldn't detect. But the relief didn't last long. "Commander Miller," Lisa said, studying the quantum readings, "these pocket dimensions are much smaller than the one in Chicago. How long can they sustain their populations?" Beth's expression grew serious. "That's the problem we're facing. Most of these emergency dimensions will only last about 6 months. Some of the smaller ones might fail in just 3 months." "What about expanding them?" Tony asked. "Can we use the same technology that Nathan and Karen developed?" "We're trying," Beth said, "but we lost our 2 best quantum physicists when Chicago collapsed. The rest of us are working with incomplete information." Jake walked to the window and looked out at Saturn's rings. In the distance, he could see tiny lights moving among the ice and rock. Zephyrian mining ships stripping away resources that had taken millions of years to form. "We need to think bigger," Jake said, turning back to the group. "Nathan and Karen didn't just give us a place to hide. They gave us a weapon." Foster raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "Think about it," Jake continued. "The Zephyrians can't detect our pocket dimensions. That means we can hide ships, weapons, entire armies right under their noses. We can strike at them when they least expect it." Amy's eyes lit up with understanding. "Hit and run tactics. Attack their supply lines, then disappear back into the pocket dimensions before they can respond." "Exactly," Jake said. "But first, we need to solve the sustainability problem. We can't fight a war if our hiding places keep collapsing." Lisa was already working at the control station, pulling up the quantum field equations. "I think I might have an idea. What if we don't try to expand the existing dimensions? What if we create new ones and move people as needed?" "Explain," Foster said. "The energy cost of maintaining a large pocket dimension increases exponentially with size," Lisa sighed. "But creating multiple small dimensions is much more efficient. If we can perfect the portal technology, we can move people and resources between dimensions as needed." Beth looked interested. "Like a mobile base of operations?" "More than that," Jake said, the plan forming in his mind. "We create a network of temporary bases. When we need to attack a Zephyrian target, we create a pocket dimension nearby, stage our forces there, hit the target, then collapse the dimension and disappear. Tony was nodding along. The Zephyrians would never know where we're coming from, or where we're going. It would be like fighting ghosts. We'll need more resources, Foster pointed out. Ships, weapons, trained fighters. The other outposts have been busy, Beth said. We've been in contact with human resistance cells throughout the galaxy. Small groups that have been hiding on remote planets and asteroid mines. Many of them have ships and supplies they've been saving for just this kind of opportunity. Jake felt excitement building. This could actually work. They could turn Nathan and Karen's scientific breakthrough into a real resistance movement. Show me what we have to work with, Jake said. Beth brought up another screen, showing the locations of known resistance cells. There were dozens of them scattered across human space. Most were small groups of 10 to 20 people, but a few had managed to save entire ship crews or military units. The largest group is on Kepler Station, Beth said. Captain Ross Martinez has about 200 people and 3 armed cruisers. They've been waiting for someone to coordinate a larger resistance effort. Ross Martinez? Amy said with surprise. I know him. He was my instructor at the Naval Academy. If he's still alive and fighting, we've got ourselves a real military leader. Foster was studying the tactical information. What about intelligence? Do we know anything about Zephyrian operations? Some, Beth replied. They're strip mining most of the inner planets and sending the resources back to their home system. But they're having problems too. Their supply lines are stretched thin, and they've had to deal with several small resistance attacks. Good, Jake said. That means they're not expecting organized opposition. Lisa looked up from her calculations. I think I've figured out how to make the portable pocket dimensions work. We'll need to modify the quantum communicators to handle rapid dimension creation and collapse, but it's possible. How long? Jake asked. Give me 2 weeks to work out the details. Another week to build prototypes. Jake looked around the room at his team and the other survivors. 3 weeks ago, they had been monitoring empty space from Europa Base, listening for any sign that humanity still existed. Now they were planning to build a resistance network that could strike back at the alien invaders. All right, here's what we're going to do, Jake said. Lisa, I want you working on the portable dimension technology. Tony, help her with the engineering. Sighed. Amy, I want you to make contact with Captain Martinez and the other resistance cells. Start coordinating resources and planning joint operations. What about me? Foster asked. You're going to help me figure out how to turn a bunch of scared survivors into a fighting force, Jake replied. We're going to need soldiers, pilots, engineers, and strategists. But most importantly, we're going to need people who believe we can win. Beth smiled for the first time since Jake had arrived. Commander Morrison, I think you'll find that belief isn't going to be a problem. Every person in this network has lost everything to the Zephyrians. They're not looking for a place to hide anymore. They're looking for a chance to fight back. Jake nodded. Then let's give them that chance. As the team began their work, Jake took one more look out the window at Saturn's rings. Somewhere out there, Zephyrian ships were continuing their systematic destruction of human civilization. But they didn't know that humanity was still fighting. They didn't know about the quantum network, or the pocket dimensions, or the growing resistance. The Zephyrians thought they had won the war in 14 hours. They were about to learn the humans were much harder to kill than they had imagined. The real war was just beginning. 6 months later, Jake stood in front of a wall covered with quantum communication devices. Each one looked like the old Payphone from Chicago, but these were smaller and more advanced. 47 glowing screens showed him the faces of resistance. Leaders from across 3 star systems. Final status report, Jake said into his headset. Centauri base operational, came the first reply. 120 fighters ready for deployment. Vega station online, said another voice. Our pocket dimension is stable, and we have 4 attack ships fueled and armed. One by one, the reports came in. Each hidden base had grown from a handful of survivors into a working military outpost. The quantum network that Nathan and Karen had died to create now connected over 2,000 resistance fighters across dozens of star systems. Lisa appeared beside Jake, carrying her tablet computer. The portable dimension generators are ready. She said, we can create temporary bases anywhere in the galaxy now. The Zephyrians won't know what hit them. Jake nodded, but his attention was focused on one particular screen. Captain Ross Martinez sat in what looked like the bridge of a warship, his gray hair and weathered face showing the strain of months of guerrilla warfare. Ross, are your ships in position? Jake asked. 3 cruisers and 12 fighters hiding in the asteroid field near Earth, Ross replied. We're ready to begin the operation on your signal. Jake looked around the command center. Amy sat at the pilot control station, ready to coordinate the attack ships. Tony monitored the quantum field generators that would create their escape routes. Foster stood at the tactical display, tracking Zephyrian fleet movements. This was it. After months of planning and preparation, they were finally ready to take back their home. All units, this is Morrison, Jake said into the communication network. Operation Homecoming begins in 60 seconds. The plan was simple but dangerous. While Ross Martinez attacked the Zephyrian mining operations on Earth, other resistance. Cells would strike at supply convoys throughout the system. If everything went right, they would deal a serious blow to the alien occupation forces. If it went wrong, they could lose half their fighters in a single battle. 30 seconds, Jake announced through the quantum communicators. He could hear the sound of engines starting and weapons powering up. Across the galaxy, resistance fighters were preparing to risk everything for a chance to hurt the aliens, who had destroyed their world. 10 seconds, Jake said. Remember, hit hard and get out fast. Don't try to be heroes. 5. 4, 3, 2, 1. All units go? The screens erupted with activity. Jake watched as Ross Martinez's ships burst out of the asteroid field and began their attack on the Zephyrian mining platforms orbiting Earth. Laser fire lit up the darkness as human ships struck at targets that had been untouchable for almost a year. Direct hit on Platform 7, Ross reported. The mining station is breaking apart. Similar reports came in from across the solar system. Near Mars, resistance fighters destroyed a convoy of supply ships. At the outer planets, hidden, bases launched surprise attacks on isolated Zephyrian outposts, but the aliens weren't helpless. Within minutes, Zephyrian warships were responding to the attacks. Their massive destroyers moved to intercept the human fighters, and their superior firepower began to take its toll. We're taking heavy fire, came a panicked voice from one of the Mars units. Request immediate extraction. Amy's fingers flew over her controls. Opening portal for Mars team. All fighters fall back to extraction point now. Jake watched as the resistance ships began their retreat. This was the most dangerous part of the operation. The fighters had to reach the quantum portals before the Zephyrian ships could destroy them. Ross, what's your status? Jake asked. We got 3 of their mining platforms, but they've got 4 destroyers coming after us, Ross replied. His voice was calm despite the danger. I'm not sure we can reach the extraction point. Jake looked at the tactical display. Ross's ships were being chased by Zephyrian vessels that were faster and more heavily armed. At their current speed, the human ships would be caught and destroyed before they could escape. Lisa, can you open a portal closer to Ross's position? Jake asked. Lisa shook her head. The Zephyrian ships are jamming our quantum signals. I can't get a lock on their location. Jake watched the screen as laser fire streaked between the fleeing human ships and their pursuers. One of Ross's fighters took a direct hit and exploded in a ball of fire. Then another. "Jake," Ross said quietly, "I don't think we're going to make it." Jake felt the same helpless anger he had experienced when watching Earth burn from Europa base. Good people were dying, and there was nothing he could do to save them. But then Tony spoke up from his station. "Wait, I have an idea. What if we don't try to extract them? What if we bring them to us?" "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "We create a pocket dimension right where they are," Tony explained. "Pull their ships into it before the Zephyrians can destroy them." Lisa's eyes widened with understanding. "That's crazy. The energy requirements alone would be enormous. And we've never tried to create a dimension around moving objects. Can it be done?" Foster asked. "Maybe," Lisa said. "But if it fails, we could kill everyone we're trying to save." Jake looked at the screen showing Ross's ships. They were down to 2 cruisers and 6 fighters, still running from 4 Zephyrian destroyers. In another few minutes, they would all be dead. "Do it," Jake ordered. Lisa and Tony worked frantically at their controls, pouring power from all 47 connected bases into a single massive quantum field generator. The lights dimmed throughout the command center as energy flowed through. "The network. Field generation at 60%, Tony reported. 70%, 80%. On the screen, Jake could see Ross's ships taking more hits. One of the cruisers was venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. 90%, Tony said. 95%. "Ross, hold your position," Jake ordered. "Whatever happens, don't change course." "Understood," Ross replied, his voice tight with stress. 100%, Tony announced. "Field generation complete. Creating pocket dimension in 3.2. Now." The screen showing Ross's ships suddenly went white, then black, then showed nothing at all. For a moment, Jake thought they had failed. Then a new screen flickered to life, showing Ross and his surviving ships floating safely in a small pocket dimension. "Well," Ross said with a shaky laugh, "that was interesting." Cheers erupted throughout the command center and across the quantum network. They had done it. They had struck back at the Zephyrians and rescued their people. Most importantly, they had proved that the resistance could fight and win. "All units, return to base," Jake ordered. "Excellent work, everyone." As the screens went dark one by one, Jake remained standing in front of the quantum communication wall. Each device represented a group of human survivors who had refused to give up. Children who had grown up in hidden bases were now learning to fly fighter ships. Elderly scientists were building weapons that could hurt the aliens who had destroyed. Their world. Amy approached him. "What are you thinking about?" "Nathan and Karen," Jake replied. "They sacrificed themselves to give us this network. I hope they would be proud of what we've done with it." Foster joined them. They would be. But this is just the beginning. The Zephyrians know we're out here now. They'll be looking for us. "Let them look," Jake said. "We're not hiding anymore. We're fighting back." Lisa walked over carrying her tablet, her face glowing with excitement. "Jake, I've been analyzing the data from today's operation. The portable dimension technology worked perfectly. We can strike anywhere in the galaxy now." "Good," Jake said, "because we're going to need that capability. Today, we proved we can hurt them. Tomorrow, we start planning how to drive them away from human space completely." Tony was already working on new tactical plans. "If we can coordinate attacks across multiple star systems simultaneously, we could force them to spread their forces thin." Jake nodded, but he was thinking about something bigger. The Zephyrians had conquered Earth because they thought humans were weak and divided. They were about to learn that humans were at their most dangerous when they had something to fight for. The quantum communication network buzzed with activity as resistance cells across the galaxy began planning their next operations. What had started as a desperate attempt to save a few hundred survivors had grown into a movement that could challenge the alien. Occupation. Jake picked up one of the quantum communicators and smiled. It looked just like the old payphone that had started everything. A simple device that connected people across impossible distances, allowing them to share hope and coordinate their resistance. "This is Morrison to all resistance units," he said into the device. "Phase 1 is complete. We've proved we can fight them. Now let's prove we can beat them." The war for humanity's survival had begun in earnest. And for the first time since Earth fell, Jake believed they could actually win.